I figured I'd talk about this a little bit. Um, I've had this about a year now, put about 100, 120 pounds of wire through it, something like that. I won't be welding with it in this video. I've got other videos about that. Um, what I wanted to do was just, um, I guess for one, say that overall I'm really happy with it. Um, overall, anyways. Um, Overall, I'm really happy with it. I'm not sorry that I bought the thing, and it's been very useful. Um, I bought it to replace, uh, what was it, a Tweco Fabricator 141 or something like that. It was a little 110 volt only, but it was 30 amp 110. A 30 amp 110 volt MIG stick TIG, and it unfortunately let the smoke out on me, and I sold it to the local weld repair shop for like $50 or something like that, and he fixed it up and sold it to somebody else because I didn't want to put the money into fixing it, but I wasn't about to just throw it in the trash. It got a second lease on life, and that little thing was cool, but it was little and it didn't have the power that I wanted. And so I got this thing here because that one let the smoke out and because I needed a bigger welder and I wanted something that would take a 12-pound spool, or 12-inch spool, I should say, the 44, 50, 60-pound spools. Um, and so in modern times, anyways, Hobart is, well, yeah, hold that thought. In ye old days of stuff like this, Hobart was actually like a proper industrial welder. And I personally wish they never got away from this adjustment mechanism. You got the coarse adjustment on this like steering wheel here, and then your fine adjustment on this knob on the inside, which is just cooler than shit. This one just so happens to be a Wisconsin powered engine drive, and need to get this thing, like, it's running, and it runs like a fucking top, but need to get it actually on the truck and welding and doing its thing. But yeah, this was days gone by of Hobart. Hi, kitty. Yes, hi. I think Kitty said he prefers the older Hobarts. But in modern times, Hobart is a, whatever term you want to use for it, a neutered or defeatured Miller. Um, and so what this is a defeatured or neutered Miller. What the fuck do they call it? Miller-Matic 252, I believe it is. Um, and I have experience with one of those, not as much as this thing here. Um, the neat thing about the Miller is it's got wire feed speed and voltage readouts on it. Um, Although I actually prefer this one here, how it's just a dial that's, a, what, 300-degree sweep. Yeah, maybe more than that, 320 or something. But the this bullshit here drives me nuts. I really need to measure what the voltage is and like write it on there, and measure wire speed and write it on there, because it's really frustrating to get used to this machine here and know roughly where you want your settings, and then like I go use my customer's Miller 252, and it's got voltage and wire speed settings. It's like, well, shit, I don't know exactly where I need to set this. But the Miller has the digital readout and the like infinitely turning knobs on it, so it's like more computer controlled, and it's got a plug-in on the front of it for a spool gun. I would assume probably goes like right here. So this is the 4-pin for your MIG gun, and then the Miller 252 has got think it's a 9-pin or something. But whatever the hell it is, it's like a direct connect for the spool gun. And if I'm not mistaken, like don't quote me on this, I think it's got 2 gas solenoids, and you can have 2 cylinders hooked up to it, and just like pick up the spool gun, pull the trigger. It senses that you pull the trigger on it, and it'll run that, and then pick up the MIG gun, and it'll run that. Um, but I didn't need that. Um, and also too, it takes that, like, it's not a 14 pin on the Miller, which to me is really frustrating, because uh, I want to get like a Spoolmatic 30A and be able to run that for one off my Trailblazer. That would be really handy, but it'd be really nice to have a shop welder that I can run a 30A spool gun off of. So I've already got the parts. I just need to do it. Um, I want to modify this welder here to be able to run my 12 RC suitcase and a Spoolmatic 30A spool gun. And yeah, kind of getting off topic with a bunch of shit here. But now that I got the covers pulled off of this thing, um, it's actually got a ton of room behind here, and like, look at that size of my hand back there of just dead space back here. I don't use this chart. I don't find it to be very accurate, so I could just as easily remove that and like mount my 14 pin here or something. The other thing that I wanted to do to this was I wanted to put a cutoff switch on the gas solenoid, because I do a fair bit of self-shield flux core with this, and it's just annoying to me to hear the gas solenoid clicking, because it's only got so many on-off cycles in its life before it fails, and you just don't need it when you're running self-shield flux core. So it'd be nice to be able to put, like on the front panel somewhere here, a gas solenoid shutoff, but also a purge, gas solenoid purge at the same time. I don't know that I really need that. Anyways, kind of tired late at night here. But yeah, all in all, it's been fantastic. The power cord that this thing comes with is a fucking raging piece of shit. It's that like PVC. I don't know if it actually will say on it what type of insulation this is, but it's just like PVC, really, really stiff shit. It's a total fucking pain. And also too, it's just longer than I need. So when I had this thing on its wheels and what have you, I just had the power cord like wrapped around the cylinder. And so I put on some American-made rubber 4/8 wire, like 4 conductor 8 gauge, which is kind of weird, or like, it's weird and frustrating that this thing, like the original power cord is actually 8 gauge on it. And so if we look at the wiring here, so this is the cable that I just replaced on it. And I replaced it, like I said, with 8 gauge, because these over here are also 8 gauge. So the original power cord and these guys here that go to the switch was 8 gauge. This thing is rated to draw something like 52 amps of input current, which you should have 6 gauge wire for, but they just cheap out on things and what have you, which is rather unfortunate. And like this fucking circuit board up here, there's one screw in it in the corner, and every other spot is just these little plastic tabs here. And so the circuit board just sits in there and kind of rattles around like that, which I guess for a shop welder isn't the end of the world. It's not, bouncing around on a pickup or whatever. And there were not very many zip ties on all this shit, so I kind of like tied things up. I put a 4 conductor wire on here, so it's got the 2 power leads, the ground lead, and then a neutral. because of the way that I want to put a 14 pin connector on here. I might need the neutral wire for 110 volt. Um, but all in all, it relatively speaking is pretty simple in here. There's a lot of of course, open space and what have you. I'd be curious to see what the inside of a Miller 252 looks like. I'm half tempted, the customer of mine that has one, to pull the covers off that and call it a good excuse to blow it out and what have you. This thing here was reasonably dusty, and you know be a good idea to clean these things out every now and again. And I wish I knew, more exactly of how the shit works. Like, okay, I know that's the gas solenoid. I know that's the drive motor for the drive rolls, which, interestingly enough, actually says Sweden on it. And, like, that looks like a transformer and whatnot. But unfortunately, I don't know exactly what's going on in here. But I do know that I probably don't want to touch those fuckers. Those are some pretty stinking big capacitors and a whole lot of them. But so that's that one side there, and then this side over here. I've seen these things here in a bunch of different welders, but I don't actually know what those are. But yeah, I don't know. I guess there's a look under the covers, and then I'll get the covers back on here in a minute, and we'll talk about this cart here. The power cable that came on this Everlast is probably about 5 times more flexible than the one that came on the Hobart here. And my customer's Miller 252 has got that same dog shit power cord that's on it, which the last time I checked, I think those Miller 252s are like $5,000 or something, which I guess something to point out. This Hobart I bought for, I believe, $1,800 off Cyberweld, if I'm not mistaken. It's really pretty crazy what the price difference is between this thing here and the Miller version of it. And I'd be curious to know exactly on the internals what all is different. If I remember right, looking at the spec sheet for the two, I think they have identical specs as far as duty cycle and what have you. So I have run solid wire, self shield flux core, and gas shield flux core, dual shield wire off of this thing. And what's really sweet about this thing, well, so I reversed the power switch on it because it felt backwards to me. But what's really sweet about this is when we turn it on, and lights are on and what have you, and it's ready to weld, the fan does not automatically run. One of the really annoying things about some of the cheaper welders, like this little Everlast, is as soon as you turn it on, the fan runs the entire time. And on like this welder here, the fan is rather loud and annoying. This welder and the Miller as well too, the fan only runs when needed. Because like some of the smaller Millers, the fan will run every time you pull the trigger. This thing you can weld, of course, depending on what you're doing, you can weld, maybe 5 minutes straight or something before the fan comes on. And it's a rather quiet, pleasant sound. It's like a deeper sound, I guess, if you will, just because it's a bigger fan. But yeah, so this thing, if I remember right, is rated like 60% duty cycle at like 250 amps or something like that. I haven't gone hog wild with this thing with 045 dual shield. But I have used 045 dual shield off this thing for a couple different jobs, just kind of in like intermittent little bursts, not like a 10-foot long weld all in a stretch or whatever. But I have run some fairly large self shield flux core and 035 dual shield off this thing um, long enough that the fucking MIG gun got you know hotter than you really want to hold on to, and this thing, the fan would run continuously when I was doing that, but it never kicked on the overheat light, um, and which is really quite nice to see how much work you can get done with this thing, how quickly, and it just keeps trucking along and not overheating. And that's what it looks like with the covers put back on it. I think every welder needs one of those. um, but yeah, the little Tweako welder that I had, every time you pull the trigger, the fan would come on and run for like half an hour solid or something before it would shut back off again. And so because it would run for so long every time you pulled the fucking trigger, it effectively meant that the fan ran continuously, and it was just a pain in the ass to listen to. And then of course then it's sucking dirty shop air through the welder the entire time it's on. And I really want to get a Miller-Matic 215, I think it is, the little dual voltage tiny little inverter farts that only take the 10-pound spools. That one, with the features and shit that it has, that one I think it's worth it to get the Miller version over the Hobart version for me personally. I didn't see the need to get the Miller 252. This thing here does what I need of it. Um, but yeah, the little Miller 215, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Miller 215. That one, the couple of videos that I watched, every time you pull the trigger, the fan comes on. Thankfully, it seems like it only runs for like maybe 30 seconds and then shuts off. But the fan on that thing sounds extremely annoying. And to some people, that might seem like a weird thing to complain about. But uh, I personally, anyways, find that makes a fairly big difference as to how pleasant it is to use the thing. So, of course, if you're working in a very loud industrial environment, then, you can't hear jack shit anyway. So the noise of the machine doesn't make a difference. This welder here, at the shop at my house, it's typically extremely quiet here. And so shit like the fan on the welder actually makes a pretty big difference. The MIG gun that came with this thing, I originally thought that I was actually going to give it to a buddy of mine because I didn't think I was going to like it. But actually, as it turns out, I don't mind this gun. I've actually really come to like this thing. However, I did put Bernard centerfire consumables on the end of it, and I have a video about that because I can't stand the uh, the consumable type that this thing came with out of the box. Um, this is just a bog standard Miller gun end, which is very handy because then it's compatible with the other MIG guns that I have, and the drive rolls on it are just bog standard Millers as well too, which is again handy because it then is compatible with my suitcase. I don't know what this part here is called, this brass piece that like guides the wire into the drive rolls, but the one that this welder came with was plastic, which wasn't that big of a deal because when you buy a set of drive rolls, it comes with the brass wire guide. But at the same time, it's frustrating because, what does this part here cost Miller or Hobart? Is this shit, I don't know. Say it's a dollar part for them to make it or something. It's like, come on, can't you just, like, what the fuck? Like, you pay a couple $1,000s for a welder. In the case of the Miller one, this one here is, nearly $2,000, and you get plastic. It's just frustrating. And the ground clamp or the ground cable that this thing came with was shorter than the MIG gun, which was rather frustrating to me. I think it only had like a 10-foot long ground cable on it or something, and the MIG gun was like 15 foot or whatever the shit it was. Um, so I put on, this should be, oh, okay, never mind. Temco. A lot of my other stuff is Southwire, but I put on a number 2 gauge ground cable on it, and then I put the Linco quick connect on it, just the same as I have on my engine drive. So it makes things nice and easy and parts compatible and what have you. But then you can also then you can get a real ground clamp to go on the end of it. Linco MiG 600. I really like these things. And so, for one, with having that quick connect on there, then you can run a proper ground clamp like these on it. But then it's parts compatible with my engine drive, and it's just quick and easy like such. And if you need to change the ground clamp because you can't get this over something, or you want to use a magnetic ground or whatever, then it just makes it easy. And so, yeah, the reason that I took this thing off of its wheels and put it on this cart here, for one, I had the cart lying around, but also I wanted to be able to run 2 gas cylinders on here, one of straight CO2 and one of pure argon, and then mix them together through this little deal here, which is another video in its own right. But also these, and yeah, so I wanted to run dual cylinders. Miller sells a dual cylinder, like undercarriage, whatever you want to call this shit here. Undercarriage, cylinder rack, whatever. Miller sells a dual cylinder one for the 252, which I would imagine would fit the Iron Man 240, but it's like $500 fucking dollars or something. Granted, that was on Miller's website, and maybe on Cyber Welder or something else. You can get them cheaper, but still, even if it's like $300 or $200 or whatever, that's too much for me personally. And I was debating about making my own little dual cylinder rack, and then I was like, fuck it, I'll just put it on that cart, which is a really bitchin', very overbuilt, old school cart built by some old timer, probably in the 50s or whatever. That cart came with a 1955 Lincoln DC 180 welder that I got, and that's another deal for another day too. But I really fucking hated these wheels. These are like hard, well, these are like hard plastic wheels that don't have any rubber on them or anything. And so with these wheels on it, when you went to go roll the thing across the shop floor, it would like buck and rattle around, and it would shake the machine and the cylinder and everything, and it was loud and just annoying. And this cart, or the cylinder rack, was actually quite low to the ground. And so, yeah, actually, look at that. I got a couple scars on it from trying to like roll it over uneven ground and what have you. And that was just rather annoying. And so reading online and what have you, I've heard of a couple guys just simply putting bigger wheels on this thing and getting like rubber coated wheels. But again, I had the cart lying around and what have you. And the casters on here, you could just as easily put larger front casters on it and larger wheels on it that were like rubber coated and kind of solve that issue. But I just solved it a different way. But yeah, all in all, been very happy with this thing. If I had a need for another one of these things, I probably would get another one. Um, the things that I didn't like about it is really kind of what I've already talked about. I don't like that it doesn't have voltage or wire speed uh, readouts on the front. Not to say that it has to have digital ones like the Miller, but like, why the fuck is the voltage just 1 to 10? Like, why can't it be, 14, 14 to 27 or whatever this machine runs? Like, that I feel like would be very, very helpful. And just essentially the accessories that this thing came with, I didn't like. But as far as actually functionally using it, this thing has been pretty fantastic.